For joining us tonight, I'm Rudy Shabazi. Ukraine and its Western allies still on edge amid increasing fears of a possible Russian invasion. Russia has amassed 190,000 soldiers along key spots on the border with Ukraine, and a U.S. official says intelligence reports reveal that Russia has given its military orders to prepare to invade. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is now calling for a ceasefire with Russian President Vladimir Putin as shelling increased in parts of Ukraine held by Russian-backed separatists. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says the potential for war is real.
We are talking about the real possibility of war in Europe. As a leader, which we have been, bringing together the allies, working together around our collective and unified position, that we would all, not just prefer, we desire, we believe, it is in the best interest of all that there is a diplomatic end to this moment.
And we're joined now by Philip Crowther. He is an international correspondent with the Associated Press. He's live on the ground in the capital of Kyiv. Philip, thanks for joining us tonight. A lot of new developments this weekend. You are there on the ground. What is the latest?
Yeah, and I'm afraid a lot of those developments are still pointing towards a possible invasion of Ukraine and possible war here on the ground in this country, because those developments, again, shelling, plenty of fighting on that line of control between the Ukrainian military and Russian-backed separatists. Remember, this is in the east of the country where there has been a war ongoing for 8 years now. Separatist leaders there are now calling for a full military mobilization. And those Russian troops that are surrounding Ukraine on three sides, including in the neighboring country to the north of Belarus, well, those troops are going nowhere. They're actually edging closer to the Ukrainian border in many cases. The pledges from Russia to pull back maybe tens of thousands of troops, they have come to absolutely nothing. And those military exercises that Russia has said for a long time is the only reason why all of those Russian troops are on the border. Well, the ones that are happening in Belarus right now, and that, by the way, is just about 75 kilometers to the north from here, from the capital city, those military exercises will keep going on indefinitely, it would appear.
Well, what do we know about these last-ditch diplomatic efforts to avert an invasion?
Yeah, it really feels like it's a last-ditch effort, and they come from several sources. We'll have to wait and see how this develops over the next few days, maybe even hours, that we still have left to avert an invasion of Ukraine. Here's what's going on there. We've got Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calling for a ceasefire, by the way, that should have been in place where fighting has been going on for 7 years already in the east of the country. But he is now calling for a ceasefire, and he would like Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, to choose a place for the two to meet. That would be a relatively, well, quite an extraordinary development, in fact. And what was the reaction from the Kremlin to those suggestions to meet and for a ceasefire? Well, absolute silence from Moscow so far. The lines of communication, though, are still open between the West and Russia. We know that, for example, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to meet Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Russia on Wednesday, but only if there is no invasion. And there's one more very important person in this right now. That's the French President Emmanuel Macron. He's not just held one phone call with Vladimir Putin tonight. He has held two. And between those, he's been in touch with President Joe Biden. It's fair to say, I think, that the French president knows more than anybody right now as to what Vladimir Putin's intentions might be.
What have we learned, or have we learned anything new in terms of the U.S. assessment of what will happen in the coming days and weeks?
It essentially remains the same. And there have been these warnings for, well, essentially weeks now, that an invasion of Ukraine is imminent, but it's getting more and more serious and more difficult to reverse all of those Russian troops who seem to be heading toward the border with Ukraine. They would essentially all have to turn back at this point. But what the Biden administration has been doing throughout this crisis, and it is a new tactic, largely from the United States and from the United Kingdom, is to predict what Russian President Vladimir Putin might do next. We heard this from Secretary of State Antony Blinken in the UN Security Council meeting, where he essentially displayed exactly what he thought, what the administration thinks the next steps would be. False flag attacks, for example, the search by Russia for a pretext to invade Ukraine. Some of that would appear to be happening right now. That playbook, as Antony Blinken called it today in an interview, that playbook appears to be being used by Russia right now.
And Philip, before I let you go, you're there on the ground. I'm just curious to know what the mood is like. How are people feeling? What are they telling you there?
Well, you might be surprised to hear this, but I'm happy to report it was a very pleasant Sunday here in the capital city. People strolling around as if it was any other day. Maybe one of the reasons are because they are used to this pressure from Russia all around it. There have been massive troop movements by Putin's Russia toward the Ukrainian borders before. This is a country that's been at war for 8 years as well. I'll give you one example. A lady I spoke to yesterday, who I asked whether she was nervous, she said they simply don't have the energy to be nervous. They would have to be nervous all the time. So there's a lot of stoicism, but a little bit of tension as well here, because there is, of course, that awareness that the moves toward war, toward a potential invasion, are getting closer and closer. And again, a reminder that Russian troops are not all too far from here. They are on the border between Belarus and Ukraine, and that is just about 60 miles away from here. There are fears that there could be a troop movement, a tank movement even, toward the capital city.
Tension there, but also fatigue, and that is understandable. Philip Crowther, thank you so much. Great reporting.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.